I'm Zach Corrigan for the Global Workers Inquest into the COVID-19 pandemic. And today I'll be taking testimony from Randall, a former auto parts worker from Ypsilanti, Michigan. Randall's family has already suffered deaths, illness, and trauma as a result of the criminal response of the ruling elite to the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic. Thanks for being here today, Randall.
Thank you for having me.
We're also joined by Tim Rivers. Tim is a reporter for the World Socialist website, and he's been writing a lot on the spread of COVID in auto plants. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks a lot, Zach. Good to be here.
Randall's story is really astounding. His brother caught COVID working in Michigan auto parts plants in 2021. Tragically, Adam not only suffered and died from COVID, he also brought the virus home where it infected his 80-year-old grandmother, for whom he was the sole caregiver. She now lives with Randall and his family, and she suffers from long COVID. Randall himself caught COVID at the Washtenaw County Jail in 2020, where he suffered medical mistreatment and what really amounts to torture at the hands of the state. Now, Randall and his fiancée face threats of jail time and fines for truancy if they choose to keep their 5-year-old child out of the COVID-infested Ypsilanti schools, even though they share the house with their high-risk grandmother. Randall's story is really shocking, but the issues that he and his family are fighting through are impacting millions and millions of people across the US and around the world. We're in the midst of the global surge of the Omicron variant, which is infecting about 3 million people around the world every day, including over 700,000 new cases per day in the US alone, bringing hospitals and health systems to a breaking point. And yet schools and workplaces remain open. And here's where I'd like to begin speaking to Randall. Randall, tell us about where and how your brother Adam first caught COVID. He was working in the auto plants, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. He worked over at Ypsilanti, Michigan, at MMI. It's a small plant, but he worked there really hard. He was there every day. I don't believe he knew he had it when he had it, but he did get it from work because Adam didn't go anywhere else because of our grandmother, who was at home with him, who she is 80 years old. So he was very terrified. Plus he had underlying health issues that he didn't really want to expose them too much to COVID.
What were the conditions like in the plants? You yourself also worked in auto parts plants, the same one, didn't you?
No, I didn't work at MMI, but we worked at Jack Products together, which is really close to the same area. And we weren't forced to wear masks all the time. Some people didn't, some people did. Adam did, but some of them weren't spec'd. You know, they weren't I don't know the perfect the mask quality, but they weren't mask quality there. Some of them could wear, a cloth over their nose and mouth, and but that's not what we should have been wearing.
Randall, we were talking earlier about it, and Adam's friends spoke to you after his death about the conditions in the plant with COVID. You want to go into that?
Well, it was explained to me that, the conditions first had not changed. They hadn't gotten any stricter, and it had spread a lot after the death of Adam in the plant. So that right there should have been a big warning sign when you have a lot of your own people taken off because my brother died because of that infestation in their plant.
And they had mandatory. They had mandatory.
They mandated that he was mandated to work. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into this a little bit, because what you're describing, it sounds like Adam, an auto worker, who's also a caretaker for his elderly grandmother, who, under the conditions of the pandemic, you're saying he's terrified about bringing the disease home, but he's under economic pressure to keep going to work.
Yes.
And they're doing nothing at the plant, as you're saying, to stop the spread, not even making people wear masks.
No, I mean, some plants I've seen have sanitation booths, some don't. It's, I mean, it shouldn't be the way that it is, even in the plants. And some places have sterile things, and some places don't pressure it.
And he was, you're saying he was mandated to work? Can you explain that?
The whole time through the whole pandemic, I'm sorry, he was forced to work. Actually, both jobs. He actually switched from Jack Products during the pandemic to from when it first started to MMI, where he was still forced to work at MMI if he wanted his job. And even with his underlining, he had diabetes type 2, and he was nervous for himself too about catching it. He was very nervous about that, and it ultimately led to him catching it at work and him bringing it home to my grandmother, who was 81 and had been vaccinated, and she still caught a horrible pneumonia set in her lungs, and she will be on oxygen the rest of her life due to COVID.
So when did Adam get sick, and what was it like for him?
He got we played video games, me and Adam, a lot together, basically every night, and my fiancée, and we heard it like a cold in his voice, and we kept asking him to go to the doctor, and I believe he was just stubborn and he didn't want to miss work. So he kept working still too, until the time where my grandmother called the paramedics, and literally they carried him out of his bedroom, and he unfortunately never made it back home.
That's tragic.
What were the economic pressures that were on? Was Adam responsible for caring for himself as well as his grandmother and any other family members?
Most definitely. Adam lived here with his grandmother his whole life. He was raised in this house with his grandmother and grandfather. We unfortunately lost my grandfather just 3 years ago, and he was a caretaker for both of them. And he unfortunately died of dementia. And we lost, like I said, he served, and we lost him right before COVID, actually. And me and Adam used to talk about that a lot, and how he was afraid about keeping everything together for mother and him, because he had lost Frank, or our grandfather, and he was worried about just being able to hold the taxes and the mortgage and everything down for my grandmother, and for him to live, because it was just them two.
Let's say you and Adam worked in different plants over the years. You want to go into that a little bit, and then because what happened at MMI with Adam is really a kind of an indicator of what's going on in all of these plants.
Well, yeah, I started out at Jack Products when I was 18, and then I bounced around to a lot of different plants. Adam pretty much stayed where he planted his feet at. He didn't start Jack Products until about his 20s, because he did about 13 to 15, moved to MMI, where I went to Purisha for a couple years, and then I went back to Jack Products, and then he begged me to come to MMI because I had friends and people that worked at Jack Products and Parisha, that at MMI, so I knew people there, and he thought it would be a comfortable fit for me, but I didn't go there. Well, I hadn't because I hadn't moved back to down here yet. I just recently moved back here from Flint with my fiance and our 3 kids.
So you have a lot of friends in these factories. I want to read a section of a recent statement from the rank and file committees of the auto workers rank and file committee, and ask you about that. What we wrote was case numbers at most auto plants are being covered up by the management and the United Auto Workers, the so-called union, but there are many reports of spreading infections and deaths. Workers tell us that 500 are currently out sick at the Stellantis Warren Truck Assembly Plant, and 300 were out last month at Sterling Heights Assembly Plant, SHAP. In December alone, 3 workers died of COVID at the Sterling Stamping Plant, and at SHAP, a worker and her husband both died last month from COVID. What do you hear from your friends?
I do know that I know another friend. I read on Facebook recently that another friend of ours that works at the plant, his father passed of COVID. And there's a little tight community of my Facebook page of people that have friends and family and children who have come down with the sickness. They're worried about them. They might not have lost their life yet, but they're very ill. I have another friend, associate of mine. He currently has his own business, and he had COVID and was on a respirator. So I can also understand that. So what I hear mainly is, it's everywhere. You can't stop it. So we need to come together and somehow, and we gotta do the right quarantine and get the right things done, because if you keep mandating us to work out here, we're going to keep getting it and keep spreading it. It's not going to get contained. It's not, and it's going to keep continuously killing us. The ones that have to forcibly work, I'm talking about even our EMTs, nurses, anybody that's forced to work and constantly, even in the workplace, even at Ford, Parisha, Jack Products, MMI, none of them are excluded from any of this.
Yeah, workplaces and schools are horrible for the spread of the virus because it's an aerosol virus. It spreads through the air. It's not only, we've learned since the beginning of the pandemic, actually, that the pandemic, this virus doesn't spread primarily through droplets. Droplets come out of your mouth and then fall down to the ground because of gravity. And so they don't spread very far. But aerosols, they're called, are small particles like smoke that carry the virus, and they hang in the air. And that's why workers in badly ventilated places like factories, students in badly ventilated schools are spreading it so quickly because it's actually in the air. And so these things you're raising, I think, yes, the auto plants, apart from COVID, we know need to be cleaned and maintained much better than they are. But it's actually the air that is the most important thing. And that's what makes COVID such a social problem, is that we have to actually, as you were saying, shut down. You're absolutely right. The only way to stop an aerosol virus is to shut down non-essential production, shut down the schools, because that's where people are spreading it. It's not something that individuals can even stop by just, being extra careful themselves. By the way, may I ask, as an auto worker and as a parent of a student, has anyone ever had a discussion with you to explain to you the science of COVID spread, aerosols? Have you ever heard about this before?
If not on TV or something. but no one's called me. No one's, we've gotten emails from the school, but never about how it's spread. No, just that we've gotten emails that it's in the school, but not how it's spread or how to prevent it from spreading any or making me feel any better about sending my daughter or even myself to work. And now vaccinated is not enough.
Well, the question that occurs to me, Randall, is that as an auto worker, would you like to know exactly how this thing develops and how it spreads? Is that information that would be valuable?
Yeah, I believe that'll be very valuable to me and everybody else, because I mean, information is the key. And if we don't know, then I mean, we're gonna be stuck in the bottom of the bucket.
That's true.
Yeah, you worked at Forcia. I know we have reported on at Forcia 3 deaths, and we also know that the union UAW there and management are suppressing information about infections and certainly about those who have died. The only reason that we know about it is that workers have informed us independently. And so we're building independent organizations, rank and file safety committees at each of these factories. And I think that this would be of keen interest to friends of yours.
Oh, I believe so too. With all my heart. I do have other people that are still in fear of going to work every day. I mean, that's nothing to laugh about, but it's serious. And they need people to support and talk to, and not feel like they're alone.
Can you give us an example? Somebody you talked to recently?
Yeah, I talked to a gentleman that works at Jack Products, and he told me that, you know, it's really upsetting when when some people at the plant just don't care, and then there's nothing done to those people. Management's not going to do anything. I mean, there's no write-up policy for not wearing a mask. You know,
Right. They're not taking it seriously. They're not actually trying to protect people or stop the spread of the virus. They just want to pretend that it's over.
Yeah, and that's that's the attitude, is that it's over when it's not.
Mm-hmm. In a recent report, one of the supporters of the rank and file committee at Forcia explained that there were half a dozen people in one area of the plant who disappeared 2 weeks before Christmas. And there was no information. Nobody reported that they all had COVID. And the only reason that the workers found out they had COVID is that one of them came back before the break. And she explained that she had tested positive and so forth. And still today, there are workers that are missing. And they don't know who has COVID and who doesn't have COVID, or who's living or dead for that matter.
Well, see, that's what another thing is. There is no testing procedures in any of the plants that I've worked at. There hasn't been not one that I've never had to go in, and I mean, not even a temperature check to a degree when you walk in the door. Adam never told me anything about a temperature check at his plant before, when all this was going on. There was no tests. He said that they might have, call him in for a test, but it was never done. He told me it was never done. Like I said, they didn't have the proper PPE. I mean, not for these people to be working at such close distances, walking, or you got management walking around, you got supervisors walking around, you got people in tight situations without the proper PPE. Like I said, people wear what they want to wear and call it a mask, and that's not a mask. That's one of the biggest problems right there. They take them off at lunch. Of course, how you gonna eat? You're in a cafeteria that's tight. So you try to do social distancing, but when you fit 75 people in a small cafeteria for a half an hour, 15 to 20 minutes, and everybody's got to take their mask off to put something in their mouth, then you have an issue, you have a problem.
You're bringing up another compelling reason for the inquest. But we had an extensive report from a medical scientist who studied how they shut down the pandemic in China. And one of the things that stood out for me in that report was that when they had an outbreak in a city of 15 million people, everybody knew about it. They publicized it immediately. They shut all of the non-essential businesses down and they tested everybody in that city. 15 million people were tested within 24 hours. And they located every single case of COVID-19. They were quarantined, they were supported, they took care of these people, and they tracked every contact that they had. But this type of scientific information about how to stop the pandemic needs to be publicized among workers so that we know how to deal with it. Because I have the feeling that there's so much misinformation that we get from the media that workers really don't know how to fight it.
I agree. I agree. I think it's a very tragic what happened to Adam. Just because him not knowing even that he thought his masks that he bought were pretty good, and come to find out they were nothing. I mean, excuse me, but when we were in jail, they gave us cloth masks. They didn't even give us the medical mask. And those masks were like putting
Worthless.
a piece of tissue over our face. I mean, we could have got better protection from plastic. Seriously. But I mean, like I said, we weren't aware that wasn't what we were supposed to do. Like I said, Adam wasn't aware that wasn't protecting him. And he continued to do it every day, and it cost him, because I believe if he would have been warned, or if he had the proper protection, it might not have happened.
Can you tell us about how you came to catch COVID at the Washtenaw County Jail?
Okay. When I first went to jail, I went to jail and I was sentenced a year for assault in Washtenaw County. I started out my sentence in October of 2020, and I took a plea bargain, and I was to be released to treatment on December 23rd of 2020. And 2020. And I caught COVID as a trustee in Washtenaw County Jail on December 25th, 2020.
Would you explain what it means to be a trustee, Randall, for our listeners?
Yes, I was a trustee, meaning that I had not been a violator or inside the jail, or I hadn't broken any laws inside the jail. So I didn't have that. Even though I was in for assault, I didn't have any issues or problems with the police officers or the other officials there. So they let me be a trustee, which I worked in the kitchen. So I worked every day in the kitchen, and then I returned back to my cell.
I don't myself know the terminology exactly, but you were on the 23rd, it was as though you were released, but they didn't actually release you yet that day.
Okay, so
explain that.
I was signed out by the judge. Of course, you don't get released exactly that day, but I was signed out on the judge on the 23rd. On the 25th, I was my COVID test came back positive. So immediately they took me into isolation, which I had never seen before. I was put into a whole new holding cell unit, which I could barely even turn around in. The toilets didn't flush. The room was very small. The lights never cut off. I was held there for 14 days. I got very, very violently ill. One of my genitals enlarged, and I was in a lot of pain. They made I sat there for over 12 hours before someone that would look at me, and then they sent me to the hospital. After that, since the kitchen crew all had COVID, we all had COVID. Basically, we were served sandwiches and apples for about 2 weeks, a little bit, about 10 days. The whole jail had sandwiches and apples. It got to the point I'm anemic, and they only gave me one blanket. There was no heat in my cell. I was freezing. My fiance called the sheriff's department many, many times because I was complaining about my COVID situation, my growing area, my coldness. And then finally, about 7-8 days into my COVID, they brought me a blanket. That's when they asked me to please tell my fiance to stop calling. Yeah, they basically bullied me to have her stop calling the sheriff department in Washtenaw County's police department. After that, pretty much 14 days in solitary confinement, they basically let us all out. Like, go back to your daily job. We went right back to trusteeing, and I was released on February 1st of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
When I was originally supposed to be out before the new year.
I mean, first of all, that what you just explained, it amounts to torture. I mean, solitary confinement, kept at inhuman temperatures, malnourished, as you said, fed inadequate food for days on end, horrific conditions. I want to ask more specifically about the COVID. What was their conception of COVID in the jail as far as stopping the spread of COVID? Or they sent prisoners to isolate, but what else were they? Did they have anything else as far as masks or ventilation or anything? Any education, as I was saying, education about what to do?
Actually, these were the masks that we wore in jail. Mm-hmm. This is not a medical mask. This is probably 2 pieces of cloth sewn together. These were our jail masks for everyone. Now, the officers had masks, their masks. These are the ones they handed out for us when we came in the door, when we stayed there, if we lost it, if anything. These pieces of cloth were the only masks we had. Mm-hmm.
And we know that those masks do nothing. The cloth mask that you just showed me, aerosol particles can actually pass through them, and they can pass around them as well.
Yes, that's what was explained to me after I got out of jail. Yes, that's the only mask that we ever were accessible to.
Randall, we did talk before about you being shackled. And
yeah.
And
like I said, I kept complaining to the guards, like, there's something wrong with me. I actually had 2 female guards during the day, and I really was trying to be kind of discreet about it because it was, my genital area, and I was just like, I know this kind of, messed up, but I'm in a lot of pain, and I would really like, nursing to come check me out. Well, I literally sat there for over 10 hours, guaranteed, until the night nursing staff came on, and a lady came down and said, I heard you were in pain all day. And I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, well, let me check it out. So she lifted up my sheet, and She said, "Oh my God, okay." So then they rushed me to the hospital, not by ambulance, but by police squad car. In the back seat, shackled, no coat. I had on my original flip-flops. It was snowing, it was cold. They sat me down in the waiting room with guard, which I guess is normal procedure. After that, they made me walk all the way through the hospital to my room. And then the nurse asked the police officer to please unshackle me. And he said, only my hands, not my legs. So she said, okay, until I had to get up in front of her. And then he shackled me back to my arm. And remember, I'm a trustee, so I was rank 10 in the jail, or 9, which is the highest is a 10. So I had no risk of flight risk or anything, or nothing that I should have been shackled for in front of the doctor or anything like that. But after that, she told me basically that COVID had attacked my genitals. The officer took a picture, and then for his sergeant, and then basically they took me back to jail.
Mm-hmm.
And were they able to do anything to help with your symptoms?
Well, I was a follow up with the doctor. They would not let me go back to the emergency. That's what was in my paperwork that I was supposed to follow up. They wouldn't let me go for a follow up. Months later, I had another. It happened again, or a week later, it happened again, where my testicle blew up, and they did not send me back to the hospital that time. I had to constantly complain to my fiancée, who started again calling and saying, he's sick. Would y'all please help him? He's sick. Then again, she again saved me again. They then had a home nurse basically come out to the jail and do an ultrasound, and found out that I was having some more trouble. And then they ordered me another prescription, and then I was released about a week and a half.
The Omicron variant that's causing the current huge surge in new cases of COVID is especially bad for children. The latest information from the American Association of Pediatrics shows that for last week, there were 981,488 COVID cases reported among children. And there were also almost 2,000 child hospitalizations. The AAP also reports 15 child deaths from COVID last week, but we know that that's an undercounted figure because they don't report the information consistently across the country. But the danger to children is immense. Right now, students across the country actually are walking out of their classrooms to shut down the schools. In Chicago, students across the city recently walked out in order to demand safer schools. Every high school in Minneapolis today was shut down. Also, high school students in Oakland, California, and New York City have walked out. Now, under these conditions, and I want you to explain more about this, you're being told that if you don't send your 5-year-old child to public school, that they will send you to jail or fine you or your fiance for truancy. Can you explain the situation that you're being presented with regarding your child?
Okay. So since Adam's death, me and my fiance and our 3 girls have moved in to my grandmother's house. Okay. Our 5-year-old is vaccinated, and our 4-year-old is in preschool and is not vaccinated yet. 3-year-old, excuse me, and not vaccinated yet. But they both attend the same school. Ford Elementary principal went on to Facebook Live, a parent meeting, and said that if our students did not come to school and it was because of fear of COVID, then they would be counted as truant student, unexcused absences, and truancy would be the ultimate outcome.
What are the possible consequences of a charge of truancy?
I believe first they start out with fines, tough fines, and then after that, it goes to CPS, which is removal of the kids, and could lead up to jail time, possibly.
Mm-hmm. And this is Daniel Young, the principal of Henry Ford Early Learning Center. He's the
Correct.
one threatening you on social media.
Well, yes.
Okay, and they
at the parent meeting.
Mm-hmm. And you forwarded to us a letter that you received from the school on yesterday afternoon, Monday afternoon.
Yes, stating that.
I'll read the first paragraph. I want to know what you thought when you got it.
Okay.
Dear Henry Ford Early Learning Center student staff member, out of care for the health of our Ypsilanti community schools community, and in order to keep our staff and families informed, we are sharing that the weekend of Friday, January 7th, 2022, Sunday, January 9th, 2022, staff and students tested positive for COVID-19. Henry Ford ELC was notified of the positive tests between January 7th and 9th and immediately concluded contact tracing efforts on Monday, January 10th. Out of respect for the privacy of our students and staff, and in following HIPAA and FERPA laws, Henry Ford ELC cannot disclose who has tested positive, but they've been directed to isolate. All impacted families and staff have been notified. In other words, he's admitting there's COVID in the school, and they're refusing, they're blaming they're refusing to shut the school, and they're threatening parents if they don't send their kids, they could face charges.
Yes.
And they're not telling you who had COVID and whether your kid was in their class. That's what it seemed like to me.
Exactly. And that's terrifying because I don't know. Like I said, my 3-year-old, she's not even vaccinated yet. My 5-year-old is vaccinated, but they both can carry it and they both can catch it and bring it home to me and my fiance and our younger daughter and my 80-year-old grandmother who's still upstairs on oxygen.
It's unbelievable.
It's very scary. Every day I put her on the bus. I wake up every morning. I'm terrified. Every morning I put her on that bus every morning. Her younger sister is there in preschool, but we pulled her because she's not vaccinated. And you just told me that it's there. So I mean, the only reason that I'm even considering this is because of these truant charges that is pending against us. Is why I'm sending my 5-year-old. Otherwise, she wouldn't be going either. But that's the only reason.
It's really unbelievable, this policy, because it's murderous. What I also want to raise is that it's not just this would be astonishing if it was only happening in Ypsilanti, Michigan, but in fact it's happening across the country and internationally. There's a mother from Wigan, England, whose name is Lisa Diaz. We'll have to send you a video of her. She's made many videos on the internet, and she's refusing to send her children into the deadly schools in England. And she's organized a series of protests on the internet where parents keep their children out of school and express solidarity with one another. But it's become an international phenomenon, these protests, because all over Europe and America, children are being sent into unsafe schools, and their parents are being threatened with fines, with jail time if they refuse to send them. What are they doing in the school where your daughter is sent for as far as masks or any policy related to COVID?
I don't know, because you're not allowed further than the office when you go there. So I don't know what's going on in the classroom. I don't know what's going on in the hallways. because they've closed basically the public out during the school times, during the school day, unless you're picking up or dropping off. So like I said, I've never been an observer in the classroom or even walked the halls to know if all the kids are wearing their masks all the time or all the teachers are even walking through the halls with masks on all the time. I couldn't tell you that.
Mhm.
So I can't really speak upon the daily ins and outs. All I can talk about is what I see when I go and when I come, and what my daughter tells me.
Mhm.
You know, because I do ask her, you know, are the kids wearing their masks? Are the teachers enforcing y'all to wear your mask? Because there's been some where she's come home without a mask on, gotten off the bus without a mask on, came out to school with her teacher without a mask on. So yeah, we've been on her about, you know, what's going on? Is the teacher making you do it, or do they not care if you wear it? Sometimes she'll tell me, well, this teacher doesn't care, but this teacher's be honest, Dad. She'll say she makes us wear it all the time. So I guess that'd be in any school.
Mhm.
You know what
Yeah.
type of mask they have?
Just it looks like the regular medical mask.
Mhm.
They
Oh
call
yeah,
them,
these.
yeah, surgical masks, they call them. And they don't really protect against COVID. They protect only to the degree that they form a total seal around your mouth and nose. So if there's gaps in the side, the air just rushes in there. And they've been shown to stop less than like 60% of COVID particles. So they provide some protection, but not nearly enough. What you're describing at the schools, you know, is a situation designed to spread COVID. When you were speaking earlier about the conditions in the auto plants where workers are eating together at lunchtime and they take their masks off, you know, teachers tell me that. They say, you know, I enforce the masks in my class, but they don't enforce it in the cafeteria. And what do you know?
And that's what I fear was because Adam was a very sociable person. Like he loved to talk to people. So I'm sure he was talking to people while he was eating his lunch, and he had friends. So he had to uncover his mouth to eat and drink. So and when one person could have infected everybody in the cafeteria just at lunch. That's how quick it can go.
Mm-hmm. No, that's absolutely right. And your daughter is in a similar situation.
That particular elementary school, they dine twice. They dine for breakfast and then they dine again for lunch. And that's twice that all of the students or half of the grades are together. In
And they're
different
not, so
classrooms.
you're saying they don't only bring one class together to eat, but they bring several classes together to eat?
Breakfast in the morning, yeah. Classes together for breakfast in the cafeteria because that's where they come in is at all together in the cafeteria. So it's a lot of classes coming in. They eat breakfast together, then they separate, go to their classrooms, come back for lunch, and you got all these classes again. Then they separate and then they go back to their classrooms. So then there's two elements right there that they could get exposed, not even just from their classroom, because you now put them into music class is not just that classroom. It might be 2 or 3 classes together for a music class. Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You did try to get to the class. I mean, you went to school to see what was going on, to see the safety measures that were being implemented to protect your daughter, and they prevented you from going to visit the classroom.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that?
Me and our fiancée have both been shut down since COVID too. Now, before COVID, it was no problem. Like last year when our year before when our oldest was beginning out, it was no problem. We could go and sit all day. It wasn't no problem. But since COVID, yeah, sometimes I fear that they don't want to see that, you know, teachers may or faculty may be walking around or letting kids walk around without masks on. So they don't want the parents to see that. They have shut us both down on separate instances. And I have talked to the principal himself. I told him then that this cross section with the classrooms is very dangerous. It's very dangerous.
I spoke to a teacher after last week's meeting who said that conditions in the schools have been transformed this year under this Democratic Party administration. They last year they were able to have 10 children in a classroom. They were able to exercise certain social distancing and sanitation and safety measures in the classroom and have remote learning. And this year, all of that has been thrown out. There's no effort to protect the children. And they're packing students into the classrooms. They don't have social distancing. As you say, they're not enforcing mask mandates. And we don't know what type of mask they even have the kids wearing.
And you know, another thing is too that when we first came out with all this, you saw social distancing stickers on the floors everywhere, like 6 feet apart, this and that. Those have all disappeared too. I'm talking about in the plants, in the stores, in the schools. Just like Zach said earlier, it's just like it went away when it didn't go away.
Yeah. There's sort of two elements to that. One is that with an aerosolized virus, actually 6 feet of social distancing does not offer protection. But the main reason that they're getting rid of it is because they're trying to pretend the pandemic is over. They don't want to do anything. They're not replacing the stickers with something that actually works. They're just getting rid of them so that people, don't see them and don't think about it.
The other element, I know that I just want to make one point about the schools in your district. The teacher said that when the union met about remote learning to make it possible for all of the schools to go remote, every single union representative from each school in the Ypsilanti School District voted for remote learning. And the union still demanded that they return this year.
I voted for it. I did not want to send my kids back to school at all. I also have two in high school, and one in high school and one in middle school also right now. I'm terrified for my teenagers too. High school, from what my son says, is not better than the elementary school.
What do you
ask
hear?
My son all the time about, he said they tried that, they try to do social distancing, but they have sports right now. My son's on the basketball team. So yeah, how can you social distance when you're on the basketball team? How can you wear a mask when you're on the basketball team? But yeah, I'm absolutely terrified. Even with my daughter, she's in the middle school. She says that, her little circle of friends is pretty cool. They try to stay on it, and they're trying to follow the little guidelines or whatever. And I think that that's pretty cool that she has some friends that are in the supportive type thing, and her little friends are trying to, get other people to, practice the real mask and safe self-distancing. And they like to talk on the internet more than, meeting up, places. So, which teenagers do, they like to meet up at the mall or the movies, but they've been, watching movies on their phones together and stuff like that, which I think that's pretty cool that they're coming up with different ways to still enjoy themselves with each other and still being able to distance themselves too. So I think that's pretty cool.
No, it's good. I mean, the pandemic's been extremely difficult on everyone and children in particular. But I think they try to make this claim that children have to be in school because of their mental health, because it's too bad for their mental health if you keep them out of school because they don't get to socialize. But it's a ridiculous argument, because children who lose parents to COVID, like that's a much more fundamentally traumatizing experience than being separated from your friends for a while. A lockdown of 2 months, scientists have said, would bring the pandemic down to a very low level. putting us in a very good position to eliminate the virus completely. And it would require shutting schools and non-essential workplaces and providing an income to people, whether they're workers or they're small business owners whose shop is closed for 2 months, or their parents who have to take care of their children who are not at school. But they would be provided with the financial resources to isolate for 2 months. What are your thoughts on that? Do you support the idea of a 2-month lockdown with financial support to stop this pandemic?
I definitely do. I thought that we were on a track of that the first time before Moore released everything back into open. I think that she really jumped the gun in releasing everybody back, because we were on that same road on eradicating it, and the levels of everything was going down to the point where we were doing the right thing. And I believe that we all opened up everything, Pandora's box pretty much, and opened up everything too early. And now it's had a chance to mutate, and I can mutate again and mutate again. And the only other way we can stop this is to isolate for 2 months and shut everything down and eradicate it, because it's just going to keep coming back. There's no way around it.
I agree with that very much.
I believe that other than that, other than whoever doesn't want to do that, it would be underneath either political or money situation or issues, because I don't understand anyone who wouldn't want to get rid of this, because it's killing our people and our families and our children, our loved ones. It took my brother, and all of that could have all been stopped. And China's got it all under control, and we have less people, and we should be able to get it under control. Point blank, period. We just got to be understanding and do what we have to do and listen to what people say to get it done.
You raised an important point, Randall. You said that Governor Whitmer, the Democrat, reopened the economy prematurely, sent people back to work, back into the factories, insisting they go back to school, when we still had a raging pandemic. So the question, and you also raised the question of who she's answering to, whose interest is she representing? You want to go into that a little more?
I mean, I'm not really into politics myself, but I'm just gonna say, if you're bleeding, you put a Band-Aid on it. If a Band-Aid don't suck it up, what else do you have to put on it? You're gonna go to gauze. You might have to go get a stitch, but it's only gonna hold it for a certain time. And when you got money and power over your neck, screaming at you this way, it'll make you do things that you know is not the right thing to do. And sometimes you make wrong decisions, and I just believe that she made a very wrong decision. Not only her, other states did too. It wasn't just her, but it's just too early, wrong time, and now it's killing all our people and loved ones. Period. Mm-hmm. I mean, like I said, I'm not into politics that much, but I know you're controlling me when you making me send my daughter to school when I know it's a virus in their school. That right there is wrong. It's wrong. And now I might have to pay the price.
That's absolutely right. And it's when you say that it's got to be, nobody in their right mind would do what the government is now doing to the pandemic if they weren't influenced by money or politics. And I think you're on to the key issue when you make that comment, because it's the money and it's the politicians who are defending the enormous amount of money that has been captured by just a very relatively few people at the top who are billionaires. Billionaires during the pandemic have increased their wealth at a rate never seen before in history. It has been the best time in world history to be a billionaire during the pandemic. They have made more money than they were making before, in fact, under the conditions of the pandemic, even though millions have died. In this country, soon enough, there will have been 1 million people who have died from this pandemic. And their policy is not to stop it, is not to have a lockdown. It is to pretend that it's over and tell people that we have to live with the virus. You have to basically live with what Randall James is living with. You have to live with the threat of losing your loved ones, with your grandparents becoming sick, with your child bringing it home from school, or they'll literally call the police on you and send you to jail if you don't send your kids to school and keep going to work. So, and you're right, it's not just Whitmer. This is the policy of the Biden administration. It was the policy of Trump before him. A lot of people thought things were going to get better when Biden came into office after Trump. But in fact, he has continued the policies of the Trump administration, so-called herd immunity, which means just let everybody get COVID and see who lives.
That's basically extinction. If you're going to sit out there and say, I'm going to let it to infect all of the population, and whoever is the strongest to survive, that's extinction. That's murder in my eye. That's not fair. That's not giving children, elderly, and the sick a chance. There's people out here with underlying health issues, and if they even get a cold, they might pass. So no telling what corona or any of these berries of corona could do to them. Just like my brother, his type 2 diabetes, that was his end. It wasn't the flu. It was the corona. Just like it attacked my genitals, it attacked his pancreas, and he wasn't able to filter out his blood efficiently, and he got 2 bad bacterial infections, and they tried one steroid that killed one infection, but it actually mutated the other one with the drug, and that's what it instantly attacked his brain, his heart, and his lungs simultaneously, and 3 days later he was gone.
That's horrible.
It's nothing to joke about. Like I see it on social media a lot, and I see it amongst my own friends. And I have a humor side of me too. But when it hits deep and it's a loved one that you lost because of it, those jokes just don't seem funny anymore. And then when you think about it, you don't want to lose anybody else, other friends, family members, and of course your own, like my kids or my fiancée, or my mother and father and sister. There is no name, face, just like a bullet. There's no name, face. It don't have no smell, taste. It come at night, day. Anybody you talk to, you could walk in behind somebody that sneezed or coughed or just exhaled in the bathroom, and the next thing you know, you're sick. So it's nothing that's not nice. It's not fun to watch someone die of it. That was very hard. He slipped into a coma probably 3 hours before he died. His left eye popped out.
You were there?
I'm sorry?
You were in the hospital with him?
Yes, sir. I was there until the end.
Mm-hmm.
Me and my fiance stayed with him the last 2 days at St. Joe Hospital.
It's a very moving, powerful statement that you make, Randall. And I hope that other workers are inspired to come forward and to advocate the policy that you mentioned earlier, that we have to get together. We have to take action to bring this to an end. And
Yes, and for all of those workers out here that watch this, please, please take this very seriously. Please, please wear your mask. Please sanitize your hands. Please take every precaution that you can, even if you have to do it yourself, to protect yourself, your family, and your friends. This is not a PSA. I really lost my brother. Please unite. Make y'all companies know that y'all not gonna stand for nothing less than the best. Y'all deserve it. Thank you for your service. Thank y'all for your time that y'all put in. Please stay safe. 100%.
I'd like to bring this interview to a conclusion. I think I would like to just conclude by asking, as Randall, just re-emphasizing what Randall has said. Workers out there, this is a life and death battle, but you're not alone. There are millions of workers out there who are going through this, and together you have the power to stop it. Please contact the World Socialist website and the Global Workers Inquest into the COVID-19 pandemic by going to wsws.org/COVID-inquest.